if you're different than in any way, especially if you're going to start working on wellness and not have a beer with the guys and do whatever, it's like you're then a target. All the things I've learned about journaling, yeah, they weren't there when I started, but it was a really good place for me to get started.
Welcome to the Be Better broadcast. Today, we are talking all about you. We are talking about the one change that you can make in your life in order to take your life to that next level. Whether that change is incorporating fitness into your life, or eliminating a food item or a substance that you're consuming on a daily basis that you know is holding you back, that you know is stopping you from that potential. But you may be asking, what's the process I can follow in order to go from where I am now to where it is I want to go? What's the process that I can follow in order to eliminate this habit or routine or specific substance from my life? And for this conversation, we have someone very special to help guide you along that path. His name is Sean Robinson, and I'll introduce you to Sean here in a second. But Sean went from a very dark place during the pandemic and the beginning of 2021, and he ended up where he is now, having his own book, having his website, having a business where he helps other people to make positive changes in their life. And I don't want to spoil his story, but he's made significant life changes in the course of 1 to 2 years and on since the book even, that we're going to share with you today to inspire you to make these same changes in your life, whatever it looks like for you, so that you can feel better, so that you can do better, and so that you can be better for your career or your family. So for those who don't know Sean Robinson is a 39-year-old electrician, a volunteer firefighter, a father, and a husband. Feeling depressed about his personal health and habits, he decided to make some changes in his life that would help him to be more positive and healthy. Coming from a place where he felt he couldn't talk about what was bothering him without ridicule, he kept it inside and he tried to fix it himself. Through a series of personal growth challenges, he changed his identity and became the person that he never thought he could be on his own. He is encouraging others to remove the things in their life that may be holding them back as well. And today he's going to talk about the process to go from there to where it is you want to be. When you take away even just one piece of advice or strategy or philosophy from this episode with Sean, all that we ask is you please share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. You are the reason the Be Better broadcast has grown over the course of 2 years to over 320 episodes, because you are the best part of the Be Better team. So without further ado, let's talk to the man himself, Mr. Sean Robinson. Sean, it's great to have you here, brother.
Hi, Brandon. Thank you very much. I appreciate being here and excited to get into this with you.
100%. So I know you've seen the show and you said, I've got some things that I could add to this conversation. And I'm curious, for those who don't know you, for those who haven't heard of you, who was Sean Robinson at the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic? And maybe bring us through a bit of the changes that you've made, if you could.
Yeah, so I was very, very confused. I thought I had things figured out. I thought I was at a point in my life where I was going to coast. I was going to maintain this person and get, through the days, right, watch my kids grow up and just maintain the person that I thought I was at the time. And while I knew there was things about who I was as a person that I didn't appreciate, I didn't realize that I could fix it, that I was in control of it. And I think I kept telling myself, I know what I need to do. I just need to do it. But I didn't really know what I need to do. It was easy to tell myself that, but until I started getting into it, I didn't learn what I needed to help pass. So getting to the end of 2020, I was 320 pounds, feeling just miserable. All this trying to figure it out, not knowing. I wasn't doing anything right. I could diet for a bit, be up and down in weight, and just needed to make changes. I decided at the end of 2020 that I would just do something. So 2021, I decided to take a break from drinking. I was going to just do dry January, be a month without alcohol. I've been that duration before, but never really with this intention. And to start dry January, not having anything, it was everything I could do to put off my start date. So it really was the 4th of January, because that was the next Monday after the weekend and as far off I could put it. And just the progress of working through things to get that started.
So let me ask you a question. When you said who did you think you were in that time that you were drinking, in that time that you were much heavier than you are now? Like when you said I was looking to maintain that lifestyle, can you paint the picture of how you thought about yourself at that point?
Well, I was a product, as we all are, of the people around me, my parents, the upbringing I had, my workplace, friends. Like we're a product of what we know, and what I knew was what was holding me back at the time because I didn't listen to podcasts. I wasn't reading books. I wasn't asking questions. It was very toxic masculine environment with construction and firefighting that you just have to suck it up and fix it. You just deal with it. You just be a man. And that's not very productive, right? We're definitely getting to a better place with our mental health and asking for help and using resources. But at the time, it just wasn't for me. I figured I was good. I figured that this is just who I am. So being where I was, it wasn't with intention that I was going to start doing all these things. It was, as I've learned since with James Clear and Atomic Habits is a big resource. It's like starting small and building from it. I didn't realize at the time that's exactly what I was doing by committing to 30 days to start.
Wow. I appreciate you painting that picture. So let's talk about this idea of you have these things in your life that you want to change, but you're a man's man. You're an electrician, you're a firefighter, you're running into burning buildings alongside these other men and other human beings who do this to save lives. And you go into the station and you say, hey, I'm going to start this dry January thing. I'm going to do this. Right. And you're probably around other people who also go home and like to have a drink or two, or maybe even more, who are probably saying, Sean, why are you doing that? You know you're not going to stick to it. What's that going to do for you? Why stop what brings you joy in life? Right? This could be equivalent to drinking. It could be equivalent to smoking weed. It could be equivalent to eating chocolate or ice cream, and whatever it is. We all have those people who love us for who we are, right? And they say, you don't need to lose weight. You don't need to stop that. I'll still love you. You'll still be my friend. Right. So how do you tell anybody when you go into the station, hey, I'm going to start dry January? Do you tell your family? Like, tell me about once you make that decision to yourself, who do you communicate it to, if anyone?
Well, we have our close people. My wife has been supportive the whole time, and certain friends that I could open up to. But for so long, I felt like, and this was proven with the industries I work in, if you're different than in any way, especially if you're going to start working on wellness and not have a beer with the guys and do whatever, it's like you're then a target. There's just certain things. And if you're already anxious or upset about this change and how you're feeling about it and how you're going to do it, like I didn't know what I was doing. So to figure out day to day how I was going to get through this, I didn't need the pressure from the backlash or the hazing I might see from people around me. So I didn't open up at all to those people. Like when I started journaling at the end of 2020, and before I knew I was going to do dry January, like I beat myself up pretty hard in this thing, saying I'm supposed to know better. Like, why can't you do this? And I started my book and with this journal place, and actually my journal became the book. But it's that dark moment where I'm just not nice to myself, and I'm not going to tell anybody about it because then, oh, you're keeping a diary, and what's in the diary, your crushes, and like it's an amount of abuse you get from the circles I was in. So no, we didn't talk about it. I didn't talk about the wellness, what I was intending with trying to eliminate something from my life that was causing me to overeat, causing me to have no motivation, no energy, awful routines, miserable with my kids, impatience, all the things that I've come to appreciate not drinking or removing whatever else I've removed. But there wasn't a group that I could talk to, and to go to therapy or anything just seemed like it wasn't for me. It seemed like my issues weren't severe enough for that. And I've learned since that was wrong, but we only know what we know. So in that moment, I wasn't talking about it. I started this journal for myself and committed to dry January. In the beginning, there was other people doing dry January, so it wasn't so bad because it was a common thing, right? The, the problem came by like the second week of January, where everyone else around me fell off. They went back to whatever it is they had committed to not do anymore, and I continued. like, well, no, I'm going to do this for the month. I committed to the month. I'm interested in the month. I really want to see this work this time. And by the end of January, people around me were like, "Oh, you made it. You're good. You made January." I'm like, well, no, I still don't feel that I've done anything. So dry February, it's a thing too. So I'm like, oh, it's a short month. This should be great. So I'm pushing 60 days by the end of January. I'm opening up to podcasts. I'm getting into books. I'm learning who the people around me are doing similar things, kind of in their background, and I'm able to ask certain questions. And by listening to podcasts, I'm getting into this deep wormhole of all the other things they suggest and all the other books that are suggested, and the people that are promoting themselves, and I'm getting into all this content. I never did that before. So those were the places that I found the information that I needed to decide 100 days was my next goal. And that 100 days, to change the lifestyle versus just changing a habit. It was huge. But then what do I do next? Right. So I'm thinking this was only temporary. And I wrote this in my journal, in my book, that this was just a break. I didn't think I was going to do this forever. So by 100 days, I'm like, how cool would it be if I could do this for an entire year? If I could not drink, something that was so instilled in me through different habits, routines, and lifestyles, that I'm already 100 days. Let's do this for the year. And but there was just certain barriers that I had that were really challenging to get through. I was in a wedding that year, a really good friend of mine, and every wedding function leading up to it, you better drink at my wedding. I don't care. You better drink at my wedding.
Wow.
It was heavy. I had so much anxiety and so much pressure to go back to the lifestyle I was trying to get away from. And it was just family, friends, around me. My own brother, he's like, "Oh, you can't have a beer. You haven't got your coin yet?" And it was way too much pressure. And
Mm.
the stuff in the journal, it was like, I can't just sit on this. This isn't for me. This is selfish if I don't try and give this back to where I was, because I couldn't find this version when I started opening up to this content.
Yeah, the thing about alcohol and alcohol, weed, a lot of these common habits that we see out there is it's difficult because you make the decision to go dry. Yet then you're spending time everywhere around other people who are drinking or smoking in restaurants or at work or in your friend groups. And when you go out and hang out with your buddies, like everywhere, it's almost impossible to get away from the world of alcohol because you can't go to the corner restaurant five feet down the road from your house without seeing someone with a drink and being influenced and going out with friends, because so many people just casually drink. And some people take it to that next level. So it's so difficult to maintain that new habit and lifestyle. Like, especially with you, when you had friends who said, you better drink at my wedding, and oh, why aren't you drinking? Right? It's not that these people are bad people. It's not that they don't want the best for you. It's just that most people don't know how to positively support other people. I think that's the bulk of it. And I do think there is a small sliver, of course, who has envy or jealousy or is upset with themselves. So they take that out on you because they can't stop something or believe they can't stop something. So they take it out on you as a result. But
Mhm.
how do you navigate those conversations and events? Like when you are at the wedding, and I guess I should ask you, did you go to the wedding, and how did you maintain this lifestyle, especially under this pressure to drink?
Well, there was things I learned. Luckily for me, the wedding, because COVID had postponed it. It was supposed to be the year before. Things were canceled, and so it got postponed. It wasn't until like September, October of that year that I was not. Like I said, I'm still not. But for the sake of the book, that year I wasn't drinking. It was like 9, 10 months through. So I had a lot of tools and tactics and strategies going into it. Um, Backing up to your question, I had to convince people that I meant it this time. I've tried different things in the past, like I said, up and down diets and the yo-yo effect and all the things, but for for this, it was like they had to learn that I meant it this time. They had to learn that this was just who I was now. Because we get so used to the people around us, and when somebody does a drastic change in any capacity, what version do you get? Do they still want to be around you? Like, so in the beginning, I had my security blanket, which was just a Yeti coffee cup that I could pour whatever I wanted into, and I just go to functions. You bring your own stuff. Like I poured whatever I wanted into it. I didn't feel anxious because I wasn't holding a bottle of water and
Mm.
being that having that visual effect, but it looked like I was playing the game. And soon after, I started to realize that people just try to be good hosts, right? It's alcohol, especially, is such a social staple, and it's expected that people want to drink it and be involved, but it's just because that's what everybody's doing. So as
Hmm.
soon as you don't want to do that anymore, most people just don't know what to do with that. Right? There's not a lot of non-alcoholic option. There is now, but like most people don't stock them if they don't drink them. So to offer one as a host isn't probably there, or you offer whatever else, and people just automatically go to the wine and the beer and the whatever. So um, in the beginning, it was just trying to come up with what worked for me, and doing my own thing and just sticking to it, like being consistent. I had a calendar, and while I was working through not drinking, this calendar, like I tried a few things while I was not drinking. Like I wasn't happy with my dental hygiene, so brushing my teeth, I just like I'm going to do this every day, twice a day, and I check mark them in the morning. So top of the day, I'd check mark in the bottom, and I was doing this for 100 days. I was drinking X amount of water for 100 days, and I had all these circles and marks and scribbles on the calendar, and I would just see this stuff pile up, and all of a sudden I'd be 100 days not having missed a morning or night brushing my teeth, and like I'd get out of bed if I like, oh crap, I forgot, and just go do it because it was just what I was now. And after getting to the 100th day, it was like, well, I'm going to test myself, and I'm just not going to mark it on the calendar anymore. And I was learning that these things just became me. They were what I was doing, and there was so many things that I'd work on that just fit with that strategy. But keeping that mark on the calendar, if I write scribbles and circles and squares, like nobody knows what that is. So if someone sees it and I'm feeling anxious about whatever it is I'm working on personally, I don't have to tell them what it means. I can be like, oh, that's just whatever. And oh, okay. Like it doesn't go further unless I want it to. Because that calendar, it's right by the door. Like we use
Hmm.
the garage entrance, and it's right there because I'm gonna see it every day I come in and out of the house and mark all my things down, and it was a huge thing for me.
Yeah, I made a similar commitment to practice guitar every single day for at least 15 minutes. And it's very different, but you can apply these principles to anything that you want to
Yeah.
do more of or get better at. So I have a practice tracker on my fridge, and it has a calendar, and you put the X through each day that you practice. And it's very satisfying being able to go to that calendar every day. And now that I've been doing it for probably about 70 days now, if I had to guess, about 2 months, a little bit over 2 months, I've forgotten to put X's through some days, but I'm still practicing every day. Now it's like ingrained into what it is I do.
Hmm.
So I'm curious to ask you first, when did you start seeing positive changes after you made these decisions? Like when you made the first decision to go dry, when did you start to notice positive change as a result of that decision?
So when people started falling off their commitments, and like I'm not here to judge anybody else, right? This was a personal journey, and it has to be a personal journey for whatever we're working on, because that's when we're going to be successful with it. It means something to us. We want it to happen. So, but I'm seeing these people, and it almost gave me more motivation to carry on because I felt so good about where I was headed. As far as when I started to notice things, I think because I started opening up to the different content and information that I wasn't before, and just feeling more confident in the journey that I was on, I felt it more mentally first, because by not drinking, and just for context, like it wasn't something I felt I had to do every day. It was, socially I could have a drink or two, like we talked about, and then just be fine. Functions a bit more, but it was more the mission that I was on. If I was camping, if I was, go to a concert, if I had a DD or whatever. Like we have three young kids, and if my wife, she spent a while pregnant, not and breastfeeding and not drinking at all, so she didn't mind being the DD. But I was on a mission at that point, and I'd go through whatever I could get through, and have no problem with it and just feel terrible. So as far as feeling better, it was probably about the January, February mark where I started feeling like, wow, I haven't had any hangover days.
Hmm.
I'm not as miserable. I'm more patient. Like I want to do things with my kids, and my kids they're 8, 10, and my daughter's 3. So
Oh,
they were much younger when I started this thing, and they're high maintenance. Like I know you just had your
yeah.
young son, right?
Yeah.
So I just felt so much better not being hungover, not being miserable for the first half of my days on the weekends when my kids are looking for me to be dad and to go for walks, to be outside, to be involved. That was probably the biggest thing sooner than anything else, because I wasn't giving myself a chance to have that motivation and to be that person when I was, like I said, half a day just feeling miserable and being, sitting there not doing anything, no motivation, 320 pounds. It just wasn't productive.
What was your family's reaction once they started to notice the positive changes in you based on the things that you changed? Because I know you didn't tell all your friends necessarily what it was you were doing and all the things you were now reading and listening to, but I'm sure that you did find trust in your family to tell them everything. So what did your family say, especially your two oldest kids?
Oh, they've been great the whole time. Like I've posted videos on my TikTok and YouTube about like when my books arrived and we opened them as a family, and when we went to find it at the local Chapters Indigo bookstore, and they've been so great the entire time. And I think they started to realize it more when I would bring things home that I was learning in these things I was listening to. Like I work, I'm 45 minutes to an hour commute to work and home, so I decided that I was going to take that time and use it to more benefit, and started audiobooks and podcasts, and in the last 3 years I've listened to over 100 audiobooks and many, many, many hours of podcasts. And I listened to Energy Bus, John Gordon, and I brought home something he mentions in that book. We call it our favorite thing. And like my middle child, especially, he's really anxious and just has a hard time communicating some things. And we started at the dinner table. We always eat dinner together, and I started to bring this up, like no matter what, like we're gonna find something good that happened today, something that made you smile, something that made you happy. And like we would go around the table and talk about something. It was really difficult at first, and there's definitely been tough days if my wife and I've had miserable days or whatever, but they like everybody just gets right involved. They couldn't come up with one thing in the beginning, and like now there's like 10 things. So like, oh, we played soccer and I scored a goal, and like it is so good. And that's one of the biggest things that we've taken from that early stage. And even still, it doesn't matter how many people we have. If we have a barbecue, like my anxious middle child, he wants everybody to get involved.
What's the significance of that for them, finding one thing each day that made them happy or smile? What have you found as the significance?
Well, it just makes them more positive. Like they're gonna do these things that we learn as adults when we're in this space about, law of attraction and being more positive and inviting these positive things. And when they start looking for that positive, happy thing in their day, and now that there's as many as they're finding, they're going to continue to look for that. Or they're in the back of their mind, they're thinking like, we get to talk about this at dinner, and they do all these things. And it's been so cool. My daughter, being almost 3, she's 3 into September. She's phased in from saying, just repeating what my boys have said, to now she's getting so involved and in context. And just to see her grow into this, it's much more productive for them. So everything that I'm doing and the direct translation I'm seeing in how my kids are behaving is very motivating.
Absolutely, especially since they get to see you in action, like the person they look up to most aside from their mother, make these changes in your life. It just shows them that no matter what it is they want to achieve, they're able to achieve that thing just by watching you as their model. That's
Hmm.
powerful, brother. That's super cool. I commend you for the changes you've made, but also the instruction that you're showing your family because of the changes that you've made. It's super awesome.
Thank you. And To add some context to that, like there was a lot with my upbringing and a lot of stuff that I dealt with my family. Like my parents were together. I have two brothers, younger brothers, and but there was a lot of moments that were very difficult and made me into the person that I was before this journey. And I could see a lot of things from what I grew up with not liking and the way that certain moments were handled and certain situations. I was becoming a person I hated dealing with as a child. So it was even more motivation for me to translate this in a way that sets them up much better and eliminates that generational trauma aspect that I might have been working on passing forward.
Absolutely. You've mentioned journaling a lot, and you started journaling before you even made the decision to do Dry January. It's something you said you started in late 2020. So I'm curious, especially being in an environment before you really diving into personal growth with podcasts and books, working in the environment that you worked in, like how did that even come into your scope of being an option?
It I didn't even realize that it was journaling. Like it obviously meets definition, but it was just a place for me to vent about how I was feeling without judgment, without feeling like my wife's looking at me like I'm off the rails, or, people at work thinking I'm gonna harm myself, or just something, right? The confusion that I felt, the darkness that I felt, the ways that I didn't know how to fix what I thought I knew how to fix, and opening up to myself. It was a place that I could outlet without feeling like someone else was going to try and talk me out of it, or not necessarily out of it, but just give me advice I wasn't ready for, or any version. It was a safe space for me to do that. And this is what journaling does. It's you can have this place that you can outlet, and have this place that you can share your happiness and sadness and all these things, and then reflect on it later. You can set your goals, you can put them in here, and then you reflect on it in a couple months or days and just see, like, how am I doing what I said I wanted to do, and hold yourself accountable. It's all the things I've learned about journaling. Yeah, they weren't there when I started, but it was a really good place for me to get started, just having that outlet, and putting those thoughts down, and then sharing them if I wanted to with my wife, so she knew the bit that I wanted to share, where I was at mentally, so she could be better support.
Were you a writer before then?
I've always done well in school, but I was definitely not a writer. It was definitely something one of my workshops, I compare being a writer to being an astronaut. Like, they were both just as far away from what I was going to be, as they could be. And the context is also like, we can be whatever we want, but we may not realize those things are something that we could do. We've got to be open to it. And like, it's a very vulnerable place that I was in, and to come to the decision that I wanted to put that out there for people, like, that was one of the most difficult things too, because I'm inviting anybody that reads this book and follows my content into a place that I wasn't even going to tell people I journaled, let alone what was in it. Working the industry that I did and having the circles that I did. But like, when I got to about the 9-10 month mark, when I decided that I was going to try possibly sharing this, a friend of mine at work, someone that I talked to a few times, he's like, "Oh, like, how's it going?" I was like, "Oh, I could write a book." And I was like, wow, like, I kind of have. And like, how useful would this have been for me if I had it in the beginning? Like I said, listening to some stuff like Ed Milet's content, and he
Yeah.
says, you're the most qualified to help your former self. And I'm thinking, like, I needed this, and I really would like to put this in a position that someone like me, and this is not an uncommon story, right? This People can pull whatever from this, and put it in their own lives, I'm sure, just as easy. But that 9-10 month mark, where I had a couple months left in the year that was my goal at the time, I started thinking differently about how I could translate it and how I could share it, that I felt comfortable to put my vulnerability out there. And by the time the end of the year came, it was like, it would be selfish for me not to put this out there for the benefit of someone that needs it. Because there's definitely a lot of people that, we need each other to lift each other up and to share what we've learned to make it easier for the development of others. And
Absolutely.
and sorry, just to add, like it's been a huge therapy for me too, right? Like I'm accountable in my calendar. I'm accountable in the goals that I have, but to be able to put this out there for someone else that needs it, it's still great therapy for me to know that, it's getting received in a positive way.
Yeah, and just imagine you showing the Sean Robinson in 2020 your new website and all the podcasts you've been on, and you'd probably be like, "What? I don't listen to podcasts, and I certainly don't go on podcasts." Like it's almost like you've completely transformed your life in so many different ways. It's really cool to see, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure I could just imagine the things I would have said to from my former self would have said about
What would
where
he
I'm
have
at
said?
now.
What would your former what would he have said?
um, well, definitely would have. I don't know if you swear on your show, but there definitely would have been some name calling. There would have been some implications of maybe my orientation and such. But it wouldn't have been nice. It's
Yeah.
definitely, I try not to be that in the past, but obviously we can't fix it. We can just learn from it.
Yeah.
And but it wouldn't have been good.
Yeah, you wouldn't be where you are if past you wasn't the way that you were, right? You can't help your former self if there was never a former self in the first place. So it's really amazing to see where you're at. And by the way, everyone listening, we keep mentioning Sean's book. Sean's book that he wrote is called Going Dry: My Path to Overcoming Habitual Drinking. And there is a link in the description for that. And for those of you who aren't habitual drinkers, where this isn't the one thing that you want to change, Sean's content is fantastic. His social profiles are also in the description with his website. So you can go and check out all the content that he posts, join his newsletter. These principles are great whether you are a drinker, a smoker, an eater, a non-workouter, someone who doesn't take care of their physical body. Like no matter where you are with your relationships, anywhere, this information can help you, even if you don't share the exact same story that Sean lived. So I'm curious to ask you, when did it transition from, and you kind of mentioned your friend said you could write a book with all this information. It's one thing to make these big changes, and it's another thing to want to share these big changes with the world because you're a busy guy. You've got a job, you've got a family, you've got these different things that you do as a volunteer firefighter, all these different obligations. Like, how do you then decide I'm going to take even more time out of my day to now put all these things into words and write this book for other people?
It took some time to schedule, and part of the podcast and the realm I'm in listening to, it's all different way of areas of physical, mental health, dieting. Like I one of my favorite authors podcasts is Sean Stevenson, the Model Health Show, and Dr. Mark Hyman. His content, like, very very good for dieting and all the things, and I've pulled so much content from every area. But as far as where that translated to how I could find the time, it's we make time for the things we want to do. And some of the scheduling information and stuff I've learned through listening to other shows, we that 1 hour, that 4% fix, right? Getting up an hour earlier in your day to do these things, or to, like, I do these things in the morning, I do these things at night. I choose not to watch TV. I don't get in. I could, and I know there's a lot of great content, but I really don't have time to keep up. I haven't seen Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, and all these things people talk about. I'm not watching them because I'm just into these other things. And um, it's kind of when I find the time to do this is because, yeah, I've got these other things. It's mornings, it's evenings, it's those are the times I've had to do it if I was going to do it.
Does your wife and kids watch TV though, even though you don't?
They do, yeah. I watch the Maple Leafs when hockey season's on, so we're almost there. Maybe I'll have that in the background and I can still do what I'm doing. But yeah, they watch their shows, and they're actually getting to be more active, and they're doing more outdoorsy stuff with me. And we're like, my daughter's daycare is only about a kilometer up from the house, so when I'm picking her up, like we grab the wagon and my boys ride their bikes, and it's an activity for them and they get excited for it. So there's a lot of things that yes, they watch their TV, but they're translating all the things that they see me doing, because the children, they absorb what's happening around them, and they take in more of what they see us do than what we tell them or what we try and teach them. Right? They absorb what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so you're finding different things to do together to spend time rather than sitting and watching. I just know I speak to a lot of people who they're married and they want to make a big life change, but their significant other still likes to watch the TV shows that they used to watch. Right.
Mhm.
So now when their significant other is watching that show and they might be in the same room, it can be hard to continue that new habit when the other person in the room is partaking in something that the old version of you used to partake in. And also, maybe the significant other doesn't understand that they might be tempting that person to do that thing. So have you found yourself tempted to get back into that when they do it, or are you just so set in your new ways that it's not even a temptation for you?
No, it's definitely been a temptation. Not drinking, but just other things. My wife, she's great. She's been so supportive this whole time, and because I work 7 in the morning, that I leave my house at 6 in the morning, get back 5 at night. Like, she's had to take on a lot of the business with our kids, not the business, but our day to day with the kids and getting them ready for schools and stuff. Like, she's not as far as I am, and I'm bringing all these books I'm listening to home, this content home, and I'm excited to tell her, like, oh, you have to listen to this book, Dr. Amy Shaw. Like, it's great. I'm so effing tired. Like, you'll love it. I even bought her the book, and like, she's like, it just doesn't have that time, or isn't
Yeah.
making the time that I'm making. And I'm not just listening to this stuff on my commute. Like, it's all the time. I'm getting up in the morning, I'm going for a walk, and I'm listening to this stuff. I'm cutting the grass, I've got the headphones in. So like, we make time for the things we want, but she's not there yet. So for me, anything I'm doing, diet, exercise, there's a lot of barriers, because if I'm not eating, like I did no sugar challenge in August. So I wasn't eating even carbs. I was eliminating as much sugar and carbs as I could for the entire month, but nobody else was.
Mm.
So I had my own diet, what I was eating all month long, and they're eating pizza, they're eating whatever around me, my wife and kids, and they don't have to diet because I am, but the temptation was there. It was huge. And when we sign up for personal goals, as difficult as it is, like, those temptations, that or other, will be everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you go get a coffee in the morning, how easy would it be to get that breakfast sandwich or a donut or whatever? But it's all in the changing your habits, and habit stacking, and the different techniques in James Clear's book and all his social stuff. Like, the stuff, it works, right? Like, if your habit is to get a cookie every morning, you get a coffee, then get a coffee somewhere else or make it at home. Change something small. You're not eliminating it, but you're increasing a barrier. You're maybe, don't go through the drive through, or go through the drive through. Whatever you're doing, make that small change, so that your mind is wrapped around, oh yeah, I'm not doing this thing I'm used to doing anymore.
You got to stop talking about the breakfast sandwich, man.
Yeah.
It's like it's so weird. It's like you're speaking directly to me when you say that, because I got an email this morning, and I used to have this habit of, it's so weird. I don't know why you keep saying it, but it's directly to me. I used to every day before work get a coffee, a breakfast sandwich, and those little hash brown bites from Dunkin' Donuts. I don't think you have Dunkin' Donuts up there in Canada.
No, no,
Okay,
but we have,
Tim Hortons, right? Yep,
yeah,
there it is. So
there's
same thing.
it's the same thing. And then that's where I was, especially like with the construction and the people I was around. We were all doing that.
Yeah,
There'd be carpools. We'd have projects that a couple of buddies and I would carpool. We're all working the same job. So you'd go through the drive-through, and everybody that was you would take turns driving, and then you just buy a round for everybody. So everybody's getting their breakfast sandwich, hash brown things, big coffees. But then you've got break time, and maybe someone's doing a coffee run at break, and then whatever lunch and afternoon break, and you've got all these moments through the day. And the breakfast sandwich thing was easy because it like that's just what everyone around me was doing. So the examples that I use talking here, or anything I post on my pages, like this isn't me speaking from some pedestal. This is stuff that I'm working on. This is stuff
Yeah.
that I did. The breakfast sandwich thing was me, and that's an easy example. And to add to a question earlier, about timing and putting the book out and stuff, like there was a lot of context in not speaking from, or not coming from, the peak. I mentioned somebody in a podcast talking about how a lot of content is when someone's made it. They've gotten to that point where they're at that peak, and they're speaking from the peak to an old mindset, an old, and it's hard not to do that because we develop and we learn. But when I decided to put the book out, I didn't want it. And there was a segment where I was like, if I don't do this now, when am I going to do this? I'm going to sit on this forever and regret it. So I didn't want to regret it, which was a push to put it out. But then I also wanted it to be the most real version of the journey I went through. I wanted it to not be from the peak as much as it was through the journey and through the trenches and through the rise to what was that year of not having it in my life. And that was a huge motivator for it, was just speaking from the most genuine point of the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious because you've mentioned goals a few times. Were you a goal oriented person back then? And how has that changed to now? And I'm curious even more so, how do you decide what to do next? What's your process to create goals today?
I've always been pretty goal oriented. Like when I got out of high school, I took law and security program, and I got firearms licenses and all the things because I thought I wanted to work in that sector, and then got involved with the volunteer fire department, and then thought I wanted to do that. So I worked on all this basically apprenticeship type program through the volunteer department, and got all my tickets and credentials for that. And then working through, like, anything I've worked on, I've been instilled to complete it, or to do what I can to be. You don't want to be better. You want to be better than the next person, but basically, how can you be a better applicant than the people you're competing against, right? So taking the courses, doing the things, becoming better than who you're competing against, in the context that you're applying for that job, or you're whatever. So I've always been goal oriented, and it's translated to a place where I'm thinking smaller, because the goals that we make for ourselves, a lot of times I failed. Like, there were a lot of times I set things, like I said, the yo-yo diets, the like 320 pounds. I'm 220 pounds now. I'm
Wow.
about zero point 0.1 pound away from reaching 300, or reaching 100 pounds lost.
Damn.
And it's been a slow journey. There's been ups, there's been downs. I'm maintaining it more than I ever have, because it's a lifestyle now than a diet. But that's how I think about goals now. I don't think about them as I have to do this today, or I'm not doing it. Like, I have to lose this weight over a period of time. I have to get this career that I'm working on over a period of time. I have to develop this way over a period of time, and just continue that 1% every day that helps us get to that point, because that's more feasible, that's more possible than losing 100 pounds today, or running a marathon by this weekend. We can't think about it that way, because we'll turn it off, like, oh, it's too hard, and we'll give it up. And one example that I heard, and I'll speak to Ed Milet's content one more time, is he's talked about the piñata, and how picturing that piñata swinging around, and the kids are swatting it with the stick or the bat. You don't know when it's going to break, right? You just keep hitting it until the stuff comes out.
Yeah.
So I picture all these goals that I'm doing like this piñata, and I do 50 to 100 sit-ups every night before I go to bed, and I can't, like, I mark it on the calendar, and I just can't go to bed until I've done it. but it's a pinata because it's I'm just gonna hit that pinata one more time. I'm just gonna hit that pinata one more time. I'm gonna go do my sit-ups because there's going to be a difference. We were start working on our physical. I signed up for a half marathon. I've been doing running, and
Cool.
it's in a couple weeks. I've never done one before. Never done one before. That was not who I was, and that's a lot of why I'm doing it now. I ran a couple 5Ks in the spring, so I've been training on it. But that pinata is just one more hit at that pinata to get to that end result that I'm hoping I'm going to see. And one day the pinata is going to break, right? It's gonna open up, and the thing I've been trying hard to work on, law of attraction and all those things in there as well. It should come through for me.
How do you know what to do next? So, as an example, you write your book, you're now on shows and podcasts, you're deciding to sign up for half marathons, you did the 5Ks, you do the sit-ups. Like, you could do 100 things, but how do you decide what you're going to do next?
I think it's easier when you work on one thing. There's a lot of content that speaks to not being so diverse in your things. Get good at one thing. Um, so it's kind of, I'm working slowly on a few things, paying attention to these few things, but I think it's just so running the 5K. I did my first one in the spring, and then another one a couple weeks later, and these were both for mental health. So the fundraiser portion was very, it felt really good, and there was a lot of great people, and it took the things I always feared about being vulnerable and being in front of that many people doing something like running or exercise, because I spent so long of my life overweight. um, I think it's just adding to whatever it is. Like I ran a 5K and like, oh, you know what, like I could do something else in October that gives me all summer, because it was like March when I did it. So I'm like, that'd be really cool. And then I set that goal for the 5K, and it's something to work towards. Or like right now at work, I've moved into the office, and I'm looking after projects. So I've started working on my project manager certification. So that test is in January, February. So I'm working on small portions towards getting to a point where I can write that exam. And it's just taking these goals that I've set, putting a date so I know the end game when I have to be ready for, and just doing small things in preparation for it. And when I get to those things, I'll just decide at that time, okay, well, now this thing, and maybe I'm not working out as much with weights. Maybe my goal at that time is to do something more with weights. So I start implementing small things and adding to it once I'm comfortable.
Fantastic, brother. Let me tell you why I like this conversation a lot. I really like this conversation because of what you said earlier. You're not someone who's at the peak, who's talking down about this is what you should do. You're someone who's very much in the midst of continuous personal growth, someone who's doing it, someone who is still shaping this new identity of theirs. And you're doing it in a big way. I mean, look at what you've done just in the past 2 years. Look at what you've got coming up with these marathons. Like, I've never run a marathon. I can't even see myself signing up for one because I just don't like running, right? I like doing other things, but I can see why choosing to do something that's completely out of your scope of comfort can be so massively important to reshape your identity and who you are. And I could talk to you forever, but I want to respect your time, and we've only got a couple minutes. So I want to ask you, if you could leave one thing with us today, if you could share one thing with this audience, maybe it's something you've already said that you want to retouch on, or something new. What is important for us to know when it comes to being more positive and adopting these habits to make that so?
I think my biggest thing, and this is something I've started to kind of implement in each of my videos and posts, is we think about these great big goals. We think about getting to this 100 pounds or getting to this whatever it is we want to work on. And the pressure to get to that point is so great. When if it's a marathon, we can't think about the marathon. We have to just put our shoes on. Let's just get good at putting our shoes on. Let's just get good at taking that small walk, and maybe we'll get to the point where we're confident enough to walk the block or to walk that kilometer. Or if it's not walking, reading, maybe it's reading. Maybe you just read the cover of a book, or you read the first page or maybe 2 pages. Like, just take that small thing towards the big thing, and that big thing will come.
Wise words, man. What an excellent conversation, guys. In the description, you're going to find a link to Sean's book. Once again, his book is Going Dry: My Path to Overcoming Habitual Drinking, as well as Sean's website, where you can find all his social media so you can determine, where do I hang out, where do I want to follow him, so you can see all his content. And be sure to join his newsletter. All the links are in the descriptions. He's an inspiring guy who's making big changes in his life and moving forward. And you said it earlier, you are the people you spend time with. And if you want to make these big changes, become friends with the people making these big changes. And by the way, you can become friends with someone whose podcast you listen to or whose book you read. You don't need to meet these people, but if that happens, that's an extra bonus. But Sean, thank you so much for your time, brother. And I know you're a busy guy and you made time for this, and I'm grateful for that. And thank you for sharing your story and tips with the audience. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate it, and I wish everyone the best. It's been great having this conversation with you.
This has been an amazing conversation for the reason that Sean is in the midst of his own personal growth journey, and he shared real tips, real strategies, and the real challenges that you're going to face once you start to make these big changes. But like he said, don't start with the big change, right? It's okay to have the goal in your mind. It's okay to know where you want to go. But in order to get to that big change, we have to take the small steps every single day. I think one of the common themes that Sean mentioned that we didn't necessarily go deep into is the idea of that tracker, some way to track your progress each day, some way to remind yourself, but also to hold yourself accountable to making these small changes and these small steps each day. Like what I mentioned with my guitar tracker, and what Sean mentioned every day that he didn't take a drink. He made a mark on the fridge or wherever it was close to the door. And it doesn't mean you need to explain to people what these trackers are, but it's for you to keep track of your progress, because what you track grows. What you track, you continue to make progress towards. So be sure to go in the description below. Check out Sean's website. Check out his book, Going Dry, and be sure to follow him. If you found value from this conversation, please share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. Thank you for being the best part of the Be Better team and for tuning in. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.